Welcome to Witches in Yoga Pants, your cozy corner of the cosmos where modern magic meets everyday life. We're here to explore magic, mindfulness, and personal growth with a grounded, no-fluff vibe. Whether you're into moon rituals, tarot spreads, or just trying to survive Mercury retrograde, you are in the right place. So get ready to disrupt some old patterns, explore what it means to reclaim your power, and remember who you really are. So pull up your yoga mat, light a candle, and let's get into it. Welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. Today we're talking about an energy that's been buzzing in the background for a while now, and I think more and more people are beginning to feel it. This energy is part of our awakening of sorts, and it involves our relationship with alcohol. Not just around alcohol specifically, but around the ways that we cope, the ways we disconnect, the ways we numb, and the ways we try to soften the intensity of being human. Over the last few years, there has actually been a noticeable cultural shift happening around alcohol. Statistically, alcohol consumption has been decreasing in many demographics, especially among younger generations. More people are identifying as sober curious, exploring sobriety, reducing alcohol intake, or simply reevaluating their relationship with drinking. And I don't think this is just another wellness trend. I think that something deeper is happening collectively. People are waking up. Not this dramatic spiritual buzzword kind of way, but a very real, very human way where people are beginning to ask themselves deeper questions like, why do I drink? What am I actually seeking? How does this make me feel afterward? Am I using this for enjoyment, or am I using it to escape myself? What happens when I sit fully present with my own emotions, my own body, and my own life? And what I want to say before we go any further is that this episode is not about shame. We're not judging anybody for drinking. It's not saying alcohol is bad or that spirituality means you can never touch alcohol again. That's not my perspective at all. I think this conversation deserves nuance, compassion, honesty, and awareness. Because the truth is, many people did not begin drinking because they were irresponsible or careless. Many people began drinking because it helped them survive something. It helped them feel less anxious socially, less awkward, less overwhelmed, less emotionally heavy, less self-conscious, less lonely, less overstimulated. It helps soften the edges of life for a little while. And honestly, for highly sensitive people especially, alcohol can feel like a relief. If you're someone who absorbs energy deeply, feels emotions intensely, struggles to turn your mind off, carries pressure, carries emotional responsibility, or feels overstimulated by the world around you, alcohol can temporarily create a sense of ease, a sense of exhale, a sense of not having to feel everything quite so loudly for a moment. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And I think sometimes spiritual conversations around alcohol lose that compassion piece. They become very rigid or performative, almost like people are trying to prove their purity or consciousness through what they consume. But healing is rarely that black and white. Most people are simply trying to regulate nervous systems that were never taught how to feel safe. And that nervous system piece is incredibly important here. So many of the things people use alcohol for are actually nervous system experiences. They're social anxiety, emotional discomfort, pressure, overstimulation, grief, restlessness, disconnection, the inability to slow the mind down, the inability to feel fully present in the body. We live in a world that is constantly stimulating us, demanding from us, pulling our attention in every direction. And for many people, alcohol becomes a socially acceptable way to temporarily leave it all behind. But what I find really interesting is that as people begin healing, awakening, regulating, and reconnecting to themselves, many begin noticing that alcohol starts affecting them differently. And this is something I've heard over and over again from clients, friends, and people on spiritual or healing paths. They often say things like, I just can't tolerate alcohol the way I used to. The anxiety afterward feels worse now. I feel emotionally heavy the next day. I feel disconnected from my intuition. I feel energetically off afterward. I recover differently now. Even one or two drinks affects me more than it used to. And I think that part of this is because awakening often increases sensitivity. as we become more aware of everything: our body, our emotions, our environments, our relationships, the energy around us, the food we eat, the media we consume, the conversations we participate in, and the substances we put into our bodies. This is not because we're becoming more fragile, and it's not because we're superior to anyone else. It's because awareness itself increases sensitivity. And many people discover that the more connected they become to themselves spiritually, emotionally, and energetically, the harder it becomes to tolerate things that disconnect them from that connection. One of the things I think is important to understand is that alcohol literally alters consciousness. That's what it does. It changes perception, lowers inhibition, suppresses certain nervous system responses, and creates a temporary shift in awareness. And that's not inherently evil. Humans have sought altered states for thousands of years through ceremony, ritual, plants, substances, dancing, fasting, drumming, meditation, countless other practices. The desire to shift consciousness is ancient. But I think what is changing now is the intention behind it. For a long time, many people were using alcohol to disconnect from themselves, to escape themselves, to tolerate themselves, to survive their lives, to survive the experience of being human. But now, many people are beginning to crave the opposite. They're craving presence, clarity, embodiment, authentic connection, emotional honesty, true nervous system safety, and feeling fully awake inside their own lives. I think it's really important distinction between conscious enjoyment and unconscious escape. Someone sharing a glass of wine with friends from a place of presence and enjoyment feels very different energetically than someone who feels incapable of relaxing, socializing, connecting, or being themselves without alcohol involved. One is an experience. The other can become dependency, avoidance, or emotional anesthesia. And again, this is not about judgment. Almost all coping mechanisms begin as protection. I also think that people are becoming more aware of how alcohol impacts intuition and spiritual connection. Many people notice after drinking heavily, they feel emotionally foggy, spiritually disconnected, energetically depleted, anxious, or less able to hear themselves clearly. Sleep is disrupted, emotional processing changes, sensitivity becomes dulled. And when you're someone who relies heavily on intuition, emotional awareness, energetic discernment, or spiritual connection, you may notice those shifts very strongly. For some people, awakening creates a natural desire to protect clarity. And I want to be careful here because I do not think spirituality should become another place where people judge themselves. I do not think that someone has to become perfectly sober to be spiritual. I do not think that drinking automatically disconnects someone from divine. I think life is more nuanced than that. But I do think that people naturally begin outgrowing certain patterns as consciousness expands. It's not because someone told them to or because they're forcing themselves to, but because something inside them genuinely changes. And honestly, I think this is happening collectively right now in a lot of ways. People are questioning everything: their relationships, their work, their coping mechanisms, their distractions, their consumption habits, their emotional patterns, their nervous system, and their connection to themselves. There is a collective movement happening away from the unconscious living, and I think that that is why conversations around alcohol are changing too. We are also seeing more people searching for connection without needing substances to create it. There's more interest in meditation, breath work, cacao ceremonies, nervous system healing, somatic work, mocktail culture, intentional gatherings, mindfulness, spiritual development, emotional healing, and authentic community. People want to feel connected without having to disconnect from themselves first. And honestly, I think that is a beautiful thing. I think many people are discovering that awakening is not really about escaping reality. It's not about transcending the human experience. It's not about floating above your emotions or pretending like you've evolved beyond pain. Real awakening often asks us to become more present inside of our lives, not less. To become more honest, more embodied, more aware, more connected, and more willing to feel. Sometimes that changes our relationships with substances naturally. Sometimes people stop drinking completely. Sometimes they simply drink less. Sometimes they become more intentional. Sometimes they realize that alcohol no longer feels aligned. And sometimes nothing changes immediately at all. And all of that is okay. I think the most important thing is not perfection. I think it's honesty. Can we become honest about what we are seeking? Can we become honest about what we're avoiding? Can we become honest about the ways we cope? Can we become honest about the places we feel disconnected from ourselves? Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. If we never stop long enough to ask why we're reaching for something, then we stay unconscious inside the pattern. But the moment we become curious instead of judgmental, something begins to shift. And maybe that's the real conversation here. Not whether alcohol is good or bad, or whether someone should drink or not drink, but whether we are awake inside of our own choices. Whether we are using something consciously or unconsciously. Whether we are connecting or escaping. Whether we are numbing or feeling. Whether we are abandoning ourselves or returning to ourselves. I think many people right now are beginning to realize that they do not actually want to leave themselves anymore. And I think this is a very, very powerful thing. Until next time, may you find compassion for the ways you've learned to cope, courage to listen to what your body and spirit are asking for, and moments of true presence that remind you that you never needed to leave yourself to be worthy of connection. Take what you've heard today even further by joining my newsletter community. Each week, you'll receive journal prompts and reflections connected to the episode that are designed to guide you in bringing these conversations off the podcast and into your own journey. Let's keep going deeper together. The link is waiting for you below.